The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Berdinsky. On my right is Ralph Tomaselli, the editor of the Record Journal, and a special guest in the studio tonight, the Republican chairman of the Wallingford Town Council, Vin Cervoni. Vinny, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We got a packed agenda, as you all know. Let's get right down to it. Ralph, rumors abound that the Wallingford Town Council is going to vote themselves a raise. I don't know if that's true, but we have Vinny here to, it's in the budget. I just looked at page 13.
Yes.
And they're looking for more money. It's a merit system here in Wallingford. Vinny, what's going on?
Well, you can blame me for that.
Okay.
As the de facto department head, I'm the one who goes to the mayor before he publishes his budget. And I said to the mayor, to my knowledge, the council hasn't been given a raise since 2005, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And we sit there and we award union raises, and actually in the past several odd year budget cycles, we've given the mayor a raise. Mm. And I think what I proposed amounts to about $500 annually for each counselor.
What would that bring them up to in rounded numbers?
About $6,500.
About $6,500. Okay.
And I proposed it with no attachment to it.
Meaning,
if they don't want it, they don't have to take it. I won't be offended. If they do want it, well, I'll take the hit because I'll put it I'll put it in the budget.
Clearly the chairman of the town council has to be an advocate for the council, as an institution, and sometimes paying a little bit of a political price to watch over them, sort of,
Sure.
for their best interests. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the deal. So how's this going over? With the public and with the councilors, if you know? I've
not heard from the public.
Okay. I'm sure you will.
Oh, I have no doubt. There's always a few.
All right.
But during the workshop where the council budget was discussed, there were one or two comments from councilors that led me to believe that they would be inclined to either reject the raise outright or to use the money that's in there. I think it adds up to about $5,000.
I think so, yeah, something like that.
To use that for something else.
Okay. Now, would the raise be effective after the election, like January or something like that?
So that's the way it's always, well, first of all, it's always been that the council or the mayor can only get a raise in an election year. Yeah. And then it was clarified in the last charter revision that raise won't take effect until the January 1 term. So January 1, 2020 would be when it would take effect.
The theory being that if the voters get angry that the council voted themselves a raise, they can vote them out of office. I think that's the theory behind that timing.
Well, not just the voters. It could be political fodder, right?
Well, either way, sure.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely. The challengers could say, those not in office but seeking to be,
right.
I would never take that money. As a matter of fact, I would give back half my salary and donate it to Master's Manor or something.
Right. In fact, I know we're going to talk about it later in the show, but Jared Lew, who, in I don't know whether it was an 800-word piece that ran in the Record Journal of all the things in the budget, mm-hmm. he highlighted the council raise.
Let's come back to that.
I want to come back to it. But I think that's why if I was a counselor in general,
right.
I would be worried about not just the voters, but, opponents bringing it up.
Yeah, we'll call that out on the show. That's
Okay.
small potatoes.
Okay.
Come on. If they wanted it. Let's reminisce, okay? Last year, so something bad happened. I'm going to ask Vinny to take the ball in a minute, but the ultimate question is, how's this year going? But let's start with a peek back. From about a year ago, the mayor submitted his budget. Then what happened last year?
So, as I recall it, through the course of the council's budget workshop process, we had some givebacks from the Board of Ed. I think
Big money too.
Yeah,
It was $400,000+.
I think we were looking at reducing the budget beyond what was proposed by the mayor by about $750,000.
Okay.
Give or take. And we got to our second Tuesday in May meeting where the job is to approve the budget with whatever changes the council has made to it or not.
Let me just set the table and interrupt you. This is a reduction. These are savings that would have reduced the mill rate a little bit, but reduced the mill rate a little bit. Take it away. What happens then?
We failed to get a majority vote on the budget.
And therefore what?
And we left the meeting with the mayor's budget taking effect.
Which, in effect, was a tax increase over what could have been.
Unnecessarily so.
Okay. So, mild-mannered Vinny Cervoni gets interviewed by the Record Journal. Yes, he does. And this is apparently the May 9, 2018 story. Remember, the context was they had savings, the council had savings staring them in the face.
Yep.
And they said no. Chairman Cervoni said, it is absolute crap to vote no on the budget because it contains a tax increase instead of accepting a budget reduced by almost $500,000. It's just crap. That's politics, not responsible government, so on and so forth. The reporter got you emotional, provoked you. I mean, who wrote this? This is Matt Zabra. Good job, Matt. Go ahead. What was this?
That was Matt's timing.
Okay.
He called me the morning after.
Yeah.
And that had been, certainly as compared to this budget season, that had been quite an arduous budget season. We spent a lot of time in workshops combing through and looking for reductions, and these reductions were given to us.
Yeah, right.
It's like we did the work that we did, but then to get these reductions, we didn't have to work for them.
So this year, you're canceling workshops right and left, I read. Things seem kind of boring and bland. I don't know. Is there any excitement coming up in May when the budget's voted on?
So we'll have, I think the first Thursday in May, the first or second Thursday in May, we will have our motions meeting. So what we've done for the benefit of record keeping is we'll have workshops where we ask questions, but if we're going to make motions to make cuts in the budget or move money or in some cases add money in the budget, that will happen the Thursday before that Tuesday meeting. I don't know what to predict because it's pretty quiet right now. And to your point, there have been some consolidations of workshop meetings where we've had the counselors go through the budgets for that evening, determine whether or not they have questions, and if we get 8 or 9 no's that there aren't questions for a department head, we're going to let them not have to show up that night. And you're right, it's been quiet.
I just want to close the story that we sort of started with that no vote, and then we'll get it over to Ralph. So after the town council voted essentially for a tax increase, there was like a little power struggle between the mayor and the council, who has a right to submit a budget, and the council asserted it through their vote really that no, the council could put another budget on the table, and the mayor said no, you can't, and through various and sundry things, eventually there was a meeting of the minds, and the mayor submitted a budget with these savings and really a windfall from the state, but that took us into June. But it was a happy ending. I just didn't want to forget about it, because, anyway, your thoughts?
Was it a happy ending?
Yeah, well, because the mayor submitted his budget that incorporated pretty much all of these savings that Vinny Cervoni was talking about. And plus, in the interim, the state came through with an unanticipated something like $2.5 million, which was additional savings.
Good point.
But your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to ask Vinny, but maybe he answered the question. There were some budget meetings that were canceled And
That's this season.
yeah, right, this time around, and I think to the public, that may look like counselors weren't very curious about those budgets, but is there anything else you can add on that?
The positive spin that, or the positive take that I have for it is that it says that this is a pretty lean budget. Quite frankly, we're looking at a 1.9% tax increase, which it's unfortunate to raise taxes, but the fact of the matter is that it's a reflection of the cost of doing business going up. We have union contract raises that we're subject to, or we've agreed to, or call it what you will. Frankly, with what's going on at the Capitol, I would have thought that the proposed tax increase would have been higher because we'd have greater concern about state money coming in. I know there was going to be an intention to reduce the amount by which we rely upon the reserves to balance the budget, just because of the impact. We had a 1-degree downgrade from Moody's, and my understanding is that their reasons were that we were applying for a bond issue and that we were relying upon reserves more so than Moody's would like to see. With those things in mind, I would have thought that we would have been proposed a higher tax increase, and I think 1.9 is probably pretty reasonable in light of all the circumstances.
What do you think? You're willing to pay your tax bill without protest?
Oh, yeah, I'm not.
All right.
I'm not going to protest. What about you?
I'm always happy to pay.
Right.
There you go. Vinny touched on the Moody's bond rating, so I didn't think we would be talking about this, but it's worth 60 seconds to talk about it. So Moody's downgraded it from the AAA to, I think, the second highest, the AA1. I think across town, across the political circles, it was a big yawn. So what? No one really quantified it to say, well, that's going to cost us a ton of money. Probably won't. But your thoughts on that? On the Moody's bond rating downgrade?
I don't think it's going to cost us money. I think we're probably still going to get the same interest rates on bonds when we need them at this point, but it's just movement in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we're in a position where we can absorb that kind of movement, but it's still, you don't want to see that if you don't have to. That's something to be proud of in a town with the demographics that we have. We're not Greenwich.
Maybe in another show we'll get into bond ratings or something in the fall. It can be somewhat complicated
Because every town holds it up as this trophy.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I don't. I'm not completely buying it, and Vinny makes a point that Wallingford should be proud of it, but at one point Meriden achieved a pretty high Moody's rating also.
Seriously?
And that's certainly not
Meriden?
Yeah. Well, no, I don't mean to. I don't mean to
Yes, you
disparage Meriden, but if Wallingford's demographics aren't Greenwich, Meriden's certainly aren't. And
so there's a big freight train coming down the tracks, and we call it the phosphorus plant.
God, talk about a freight train.
Yeah, it's a real big deal, potentially a big expense. It's not going to be baked into the mill rate. It's not into the tax rate. It's water sewer ratepayers that may take the hit. Will take the hit on this. Vinny Cervoni, bring us up to date on what's going on with this phosphorus plant. Give us some sort of order of magnitude and the timing of this.
So at our February 13th meeting, I believe, we approved a resolution that was necessary for part of the grant application that we're applying for in connection with the funding that we're going to get from the state. And then fast forward to today, the bid deadline is May 7th. For
Bids for
the plan. We have to with the grant application, we have to submit the plan to build the plant.
Is this the bids for the general contractor that's going to build it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the design that's going to come up with the specs and the cost.
All right. And so on this great bid opening, then a number will appear, and that's what we're going to have to pay subject to grants. And the order of magnitude, what are we talking? Million? What are we talking about?
Oh, we're talking tens of millions.
Tens of millions of dollars at ratepayers over time, because it's going to be bonded or low-cost loans.
Well,
Stop running your water and get a low-volume toilet.
I mean, he says
you
tens
know,
of millions, and you're right. At times, this figure of like 80+ million.
Well, there's phase one and phase two.
Right,
We're
no.
only talking phase one right now.
Okay.
And there's an expensive phase two.
Right, and I think when we toss
after that.
figures around, it's in the 40s on each one.
Well, about a year ago, it was an estimate was needed.
Right.
And the estimate that I found was about 47 million. Wallingford would be paying roughly 60% of that. I'm rounding.
For one phase.
For phase
Well,
one.
right, okay.
And so the real numbers are coming in, as Vinny said, in a couple weeks on that phase one. So, there's some new debt coming our way. I want to get to the issue of tolls, not as a matter of state policy, but as a matter, well, we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, we will. But really as a matter of local Wallingford Town Council policy. An agenda item was sponsored by Craig Fishbein as sort of a protest resolution against tolls. This doesn't happen a lot. Something like this I don't think has ever happened before. But there's a choice, Vinny Cervoni, you had to make as to whether to put this on the agenda, not put it on the agenda. What did you do and why did you do it?
Well, first of all, I don't have a policy of not putting counselors' requests on the agenda. I might ask you to move it, to a later meeting, if there's a packed agenda or...
Let me interrupt you just a minute. Or, like when I was on the council and in the minority, my agenda requests were always at the very last item. They would come at about 10:30 at night after the Record Journal reporter had left. That's how they... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, that's because you were on the council before the internet, so...
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, no.
I'm just teasing Bob.
Yeah.
He knows who he is.
Yeah. And the order is a completely different topic. I don't know that I do that.
Yeah.
But I'm not in the habit of not putting counselors' requests on the agenda. And so the request came in. It was the night before there was going to be a forum in the Wallingford Town Council chambers that was going to have, I believe, Representative Fishbein, Senator Fasano, probably Representative Candelora, and a couple of other state elected officers there to talk about
The road show.
the road show. Yeah.
It's really a rally against tolls.
Yes.
My editorial comment. So, Ralph and I talked about this on a couple of times at least, and I think it was your opinion and I agreed, and it was my opinion and you agreed, that this was really a way for the anti-tollers to make the Democrats squirm. It was really a political move without any practical effect. Others would say, oh, no, this is really serious business. It's very important to register a protest to impact policy. Your view on whether it worked, what you accomplished, how did you vote, and why did you vote the way you did?
I will tell you that I walked into the chambers thinking that it was going to fail. And, I ultimately cast the vote that made the motion pass. So I did vote for it.
The deciding vote.
Yes, which so rarely do they have the opportunity to do, but I did. And for me personally, my statement is this: you know what? So many other states have tolls. At some point, Connecticut's going to end up with tolls. However, if this is what you're going to do, if you're going to make money on the highways, can you please take 20 or 30 cents off the gas tax? Can you please not tax me somewhere else? And I don't mean just me. Daily, I don't get on highways. My wife does. My wife drives to Hartford every day. There are a lot of people that get on the highway every day. If you're going to find another way to raise money from me, can you please save me money somewhere else? So that's kind of where I came from with it. And I will tell you that at that meeting, the resounding public comment was against tolls.
Oh, sure.
I think there was one speaker who kind of equivocated and said,
Yeah.
get out of the way.
Ralph?
Well, I guess my question is if a Democratic counselor wants to bring a state issue or maybe even a national issue onto the agenda. I mean, is there a precedent set with this toll that would kind of obligate you to put it on the agenda?
It's an interesting way to phrase the question, but if
Okay.
you remember when I started talking about this, I said that I'm not in the habit of not putting counselors' requests on the agenda.
Okay, you did say that.
And so why would I treat that any differently? You know what? The discussion's going to happen. We'll put it on the floor. Let it survive or die on its own merits. You know, a year ago in October, we, or it might have been before the 17 election, so it was a year ago last October, we passed a resolution in response to the opioid crisis.
Yes, I remember.
You know, and
There wasn't a big divide of opinion there. Everyone's against the opioid crisis. It wasn't a partisan issue. It wasn't a matter of politicking. So this breaks new ground because this is really a partisan, highly divisive Republican versus Democrat, Democrat versus Republican sort of an item. We were joking around, I think, on the show that we talked about it, what the Democrats should have done is when they saw this agenda item get on the agenda like a global warming item to go side by side and just junk up the agenda with all these kinds of things. You know, if that's the game you want to play, the other side can play it too, and you might as well, go full bore. Because I think, I philosophized last time, and again, I think you were on my right, on my wingman on. It kind of, I believe, it kind of degrades the institution of the town council to throw these highly partisan things up there and divide the public on something we don't have to be divided on, and to what end. So I think there was a bit of pandering going on. I don't think it was good for the town council. I hope not to see it again, but you never know. Then you got the final word on my word. Your thought on my thought.
I don't completely disagree with you. I hope this doesn't become a habit. And it's something that didn't originate from me, and it's as I said, I don't stand in the way of a counselor requesting an agenda item. I just might have organizational issues with it.
Let's fast forward to November 2019, local elections. We got Jared Liu, who has started his campaign early. Good for him. That's the way. That's the way to do it. But we also have a council contest that I want to talk to Vinny about. But Record Journal had a free ad. In the Sunday paper. I would have died to have that free ad. Didn't have to buy the space. You gave it to him. Good for him. Good for you.
Yeah.
What's going on? What was your thinking? What's your policy? What's it going to look like going forward?
It's the second op-ed piece that Jared Liu has run in the Record Journal.
Okay.
And he's at least planning on writing 2 more.
Okay.
And of course, anybody can offer an op-ed piece.
Okay.
I think you of course have offered them. I'm not sure if Vinny has offered them, but anyone can offer an op-ed piece, and we'll take a look at it, and we generally, like Vinny and agendas, we try to run almost everything we get. It's usually local content, and we try to run it. The one thing here is that we're dealing with someone who has declared his
Candidacy?
his desire to get the nomination.
Right.
He hasn't been nominated.
Correct.
So, right. So, and when we're in that situation, we'll generally limit people to 1 a month. And certainly, we would gladly accept any response from Mayor Dickinson or anybody on the council.
So I just want to see how deep the hole is that you've dug yourself. You're going to have at least 12 people competing for the council in the fall, maybe
Right.
13.
We would run one from each one, certainly.
13 op-eds.
If we can
What's
get-
the word limit? Let's get
I
the
think we
ground.
usually try to get them, and Jeff Kurz, who's our editorial page editor.
Yeah.
But we're usually looking at op-eds, usually in the 700 to 800 would be a maximum.
Okay.
And one of the keys is if you want to have something in, like Jared Liu is doing, do it now.
Yeah.
Because as you get closer to election, it gets busier. There are more submissions. There are letters. I mean, he's taking the right approach in the sense that he's starting early.
And without any competition
He's
from
not
the
getting a lot
opposing
of
party.
competition, right? And he's not jammed up on the page. There's not a lot of
Right. So, Vinnie Cervoni, is this a mayoral contest in 2009? I'm assuming Mayor Dickinson's going to run again. I think that's a foregone conclusion, but let's make that assumption that Mayor Dickinson is going to run again. Is this mayoral campaign going to look differently? Do you think, in your opinion, if you were advising the mayor, he's going to have to be a little bit more active, the mayor, in his campaigning? Because here comes Jared Lew, starting early and raising money.
So Jared Lew has started overtly campaigning now, just a couple months ago, but the mayor campaigns from the day he's elected.
Really?
And he does it in what I think is...
That's not a secret, actually.
Yeah, in
everything is campaign.
Right.
Yeah, what I think is an appropriate manner. I think he shows up at athletic activities for both high schools and takes the opportunities to go to award ceremonies and shows up in places where people appreciate his being there. In terms of what he chooses to put in the paper and the like, well, he typically runs a quieter campaign in that regard.
And this year, what do you think? Is he gonna pick it up a notch, or no need? He's got it. No matter what, he's got it.
I think that he's going to be cognizant of what's happening.
Be cognizant of what's happening.
And I'm hoping that means that he's going to probably step up a little bit in terms of the shininess of his campaign.
Well put. Let's switch over to council. We're going to, after your thoughts, Vinny, I'm going to go to Ralph on this. Let's take this hypothetical that someone moves in from out of town, and they don't know, local politics, but they start watching the council meetings on TV. They don't know who's Republican and who's Democrat. They see the names there, but they don't know the party affiliations, and they watch, let's say, council meetings for 3 or 4 months at a time. Would they be able to pick out one party from the next and say, oh, those guys are from one party and those guys are from another party, whether it's Republican or Democrat? I don't want to get mixed up in that now, but if you want to throw that in, that's fine. Is there any distinction between the parties? Is there any brand that the Republicans have carved for themselves and any brand the Democrats have carved for themselves, or they're all fungible? All you guys are fungible. The party affiliation doesn't matter. You can't tell from your votes, your speeches, your philosophies, you just can't tell. What do you think?
My observation over the past 3 terms is that it's a little less obvious than it used to be. I think you remember the days when the R's had the majority and they would vote in lockstep. And
oh man, that was the R team. Tried to make it as obvious as possible. The rubber stamp team. If anyone forgot it, I'd remind them. Absolutely. Compare and contrast. Compare and contrast is what it's about.
Yeah, no, I think all of the counselors, all 9 sitting up there these days, have their own identity, and there are times when there's a rare occasion where there's a party line vote, but it's certainly less so than I recall it being 10 years ago.
And that's because sometimes Fishbein and Latourneau wander off the reservation. That's breaking the code. That's what he's saying. Playing around. So same question to you. My hypothetical person moves in from out of town, watches TV, and what do you think?
And I don't watch the council as much as you guys do, so I don't have an informed opinion, but just off the top of my head, I would say 2 people jump out. I think my experience has been that you can't interact in any way with Craig Fishbein.
Well, this is not about Craig Fishbein.
Okay,
I just want.
You were asking me, do councilors...
Is there a brand that you think you can paint the Republicans?
No, I don't think I can paint all 9 or 3. I think there are individual councilors that clearly stand out as Democrats and Republicans.
Okay.
And that's what I was trying to say. I think Craig stands out as a Republican, and I think, and this is not a criticizing them.
Yeah.
I think that what I'm saying is with Craig, and I think with Gina Morgenstein, everything she does and everything she says carries a political philosophy underneath it that says
a leftist tinge.
Well, I don't.
And Craig a rightish tinge. Is that trying to break the
right?
code?
Yes,
I mean,
right.
I'm trying to get
and again, but I
language.
just want to be clear that that's not a knock on them.
Not at all.
It comes through, and I'm okay with that leftist tinge being one of these
Maybe it's
lefty
not.
journalists.
Maybe it's
I'd
not.
feel
We're
very at home if that's what it is.
Let's talk about CMEC for a minute. A little bit of background. Last night, that was Tuesday night. Vinny Cervoni, someone made a motion to approve the settlement of the CMEC arbitration matter.
Right.
And that was passed unanimously. Vinny, just give us a quick description of the events of last night, how you saw them, and then we'll get into a little more depth. I mean, I'm not asking what happened in executive session. I just mean the broad brush.
Well, in executive session, we were presented with a settlement proposal. We spent quite some time reviewing it with those who proposed it to us, and we came out, and Tom Laffin made a motion to approve the proposed settlement, and it passed.
Okay. So I just want to congratulate the PUC, congratulate the legal staff, the town council, the town administration for recovering oodles and oodles and oodles of money. This is a very lucrative settlement. I mean, congratulations, well done, well played. Tons of cash flowing in. I don't care about the amount. I
Okay.
did care last night. Don't care anymore. So why didn't that end it? That ends it, right? And that, between you and the Record Journal now, I mean,
Well, there's not much to talk about because
Yeah.
the other side hasn't approved it yet. And until the other side approves it, we won't talk about it.
Yeah, so the motion was to approve a settlement, and I just looked in the dictionary as to what that is. It's an official agreement intended to resolve. It's an official agreement.
Right.
Official agreement intended to resolve a dispute or conflict. And the motion, as clarified by you, Vinny, was to approve the settlement. So it's over. I mean, all the litigation is done. There's no more arguments, briefs, evidence,
Right.
witnesses. All the issues have been decided. This thing the arbitration started in 2015.
Right.
So there's really nothing left to do except the formalities and cash the check. Yeah, I mean, and there's another check, and,
But shouldn't,
for 2018, there's another check.
I mean,
Yeah.
shouldn't what,
This is supposed to be a straight-up presentation I'm making
Right,
here. I mean, this
but-
is pretty bland.
No, I know it is. I
I
know
got
it is.
another comment, which we'll get to.
right, and I
but-
know I know there's a lot more to this, but
Yeah.
I just, isn't what the taxpayer should be looking at, I mean, among the things they should be looking at, isn't it the difference between the amount of money that CMEC will pay the town, if that's the right word, versus the legal fees that the town put into that, or am I
Well-
simplifying that too much?
Well, I don't think it's not oversimplified.
Okay.
I mean, so
So in other words,
yeah, but the amount of money that Wallingford is, the amount of money that's going to be in the check that CMEC is going to write is a secret, which is going to go to the grave with the counselors. To the grave.
I'm going to disagree with that.
Oh, good. I was hoping to provoke a response, and we got it.
I hadn't noticed.
I finally crossed a tripwire here.
Your sarcasm was so subtle that
Even you were fooled for a minute.
that I was trying not to
Okay,
trip over it.
I'm sorry.
But no, once
Oh, good.
this
We got him.
Okay,
We
well,
got
no,
him.
yeah, I even got a little fooled. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vinny.
He's pretty good.
He's very good.
Yeah.
No.
No, once this is agreed upon by both sides, the town's going to take. We're going to be able to talk about it. We'll be able to talk about what the dollar amounts were, what the big check is, what the impact is going forward, and we'll be able to talk in detail about it.
Okay. I'll go to the next point unless you want to talk about the money more. You want to?
Well, I do.
He can't
Only
talk about
because,
the money.
again, and I feel a little out of my element, though. But
Yeah.
I mean, to me,
You're right
and
in
I'm
the
just
element.
throwing numbers out there.
Yeah.
I don't know these. I think these numbers have some relevancy.
Yeah.
But for example, in the end, the question might be, should we have spent $3 million to achieve $4 million? And I that's what I'm trying to get to here.
Yeah.
And the town spent a lot of money. When I saw the town's legal bill exceed $2 million,
Yeah, it's 2.8 and change.
right, whatever,
Yeah.
I expected the difference between the legal bill and the amount the town would eventually recoup to not be the difference between 2 and 3 or 3 and 4.
Well,
I
I don't know who raised or why your expectations were raised so high.
Well, no, I think,
I-
and I'm
I
not
have
being
no
sarcastic.
idea. I have no idea.
I think as like an average person, and I'm sitting between two lawyers, that
Yeah.
if
I resemble that remark,
right,
but go
right,
ahead.
but
Yeah.
that I generally am not going to spend $3 million to win $4 million.
Well, if you knew how it was going to work out going in,
Right.
maybe,
But-
but no one really knows.
No, well, but
how-
isn't
how
that
it's
isn't
gonna
that
work
part
out.
of what you do, though, Mike? I mean,
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
being. I know I'm being. I'm giving you my best
No,
here.
go
No
for it.
sarcasm.
No, go for it.
That
Yeah,
part of the legal process
Right.
has to be, even if it's just me trying to assess an accident or something like that. I'm sitting with my lawyer, and one of the first things I'm trying to take account of is, how good is my case? How strong is it? If I spend $100,000, what might I recoup? What are my chances of recouping
Well,
that? So that's where I get to, this notion of once this bill went above 2.5 million,
Yeah.
now I'm expecting the town in the end to say to me, well, we want 8 million.
Well, I think it's clear, and maybe we'll
Okay.
finish this up on
All
another
right,
show.
okay. right.
In view of what Vinnie Cervoni just, I think it's clear the town is going to get more than it paid.
No, I don't think
so-
would they admit if they got less than it.
Well, it'd be a matter of public record eventually.
Well, but wouldn't they?
So,
Okay, go ahead.
So there will be a recovery in excess of the expenses paid out. The magnitude of that, let's wait for a show or two
Okay.
if it's public, but.
Right, and I won't. But when you say expenses,
Yeah,
you're
but-
talking about legal expenses.
Everything,
that doesn't account the amount of time that staff put
No,
into it. I
no.
mean,
There's no
right.
way-
So if the difference is $1 million or less than $1 million, and now you're adding into staff time and
Well-
everything else that goes into it,
Yeah.
you'd have to say to yourself, you got bad legal advice here.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to attack that. I was
Okay.
going to go to Vinnie Cervoni,
yeah.
but I pointed my finger.
I opened up a lot of cans of worms.
I wouldn't expect it. But your thoughts on our thoughts, and then I'll make my other point.
The worms that Ralph
I know.
opened up, they're going to stay on hooks for a while.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm happy to come back and discuss this with you after it's fully settled and it becomes public information.
So the other point has nothing to do with money again, and congratulate the PUC on the huge recovery, and the Wallingford Town Council and everybody on this huge amount of money. But all through the history of this, whenever someone came to the microphone at a town council meeting, and maybe even the PUC, and asked the question about what's going on with the CMEC arbitration, or what's happening, or what's the status, they always got kind of the same answer, and not always in the most respectful tone that, well, we can't talk about pending litigation. And that was the common, constant refrain.
Right.
And it was repeated so much that it was almost like put out, sometimes a great theater, in my opinion, especially by Jerry Farrell Sr., who would say it with such authority and such solemnity, well, we don't talk about pending litigation. It was almost biblical. It was almost like there's this ironclad biblical rule that you don't do that. And I reject that. I think there's a couple things going on, or could be going on, that can explain that repeated refrain that we don't discuss pending litigation. One thing that may be going on is that the town wanted to avoid the news cycle. So if you don't want to discuss it, you don't want to continue the news cycle, you don't make a statement, you don't get a quote, you don't show up in social media, you just don't want to get into it for whatever reason, but basically you want to get by the news cycle. It's not just the Wallingford case. There could be other cases around the country, around the state, where someone wants to avoid the news cycle for one reason or another. And so they say, well, they think of a reason. Well, either no comment, they don't answer the phone, or if you're at a meeting, you can't not answer the phone and you can't say no comment. So you say, well, I don't discuss pending. That may be one. The other reason why a lawyer may, on a continuous basis, now, in other words, not just an isolated, but the policy, the rock-solid biblical policy of not discussing litigation is from time to time the client has a crappy case, and what can you say about a crappy case? And so a lot of times in criminal cases, high-profile criminal cases, where the guy's going to plead guilty or did plead guilty or he's going to be indicted, I mean, it's just an ugly case right from the start. So what are you going to say? I mean, so, maybe just don't say anything. So, that could be what's going on. Something else that might be going on, there might be either a gentleman's agreement or an express agreement with CMEC, sort of like a non-disclosure, a gentleman agreement. You don't make a statement to the press, I don't make a statement to the press, sort of a code of silence. And I think there is more of a substantial chance that may be going on, and maybe the council doesn't know about it. But I'm suspicious that may be what is going on, a gentleman's agreement not to talk. And so when Jerry Farrell Sr. and the administration says, well, we're not going to talk about it, it may have nothing to do with protecting the client's interest. It may have to do with an agreement that was made either over the phone in a letter not to talk. I think that could be going on. And it also may be a skills issue. And it may be that a lawyer or a lawyer doesn't feel comfortable with the issues, the facts, the law, the procedure, the status, and rather than make a comment that he maybe shouldn't be making because he's not equipped to do it, just, well, I don't talk about it, just our policy. And so that may be going on, also. So I was thinking this morning, what's going on around the country? Are lawyers really talking about their clients' cases in the press? And so I went to the Record Journal. Mm-hmm. Well, if Jerry Farrell Sr. or if not Vinny Cervoni is not a lawyer representing, I'm not talking about clients making statements. I'm talking about lawyers making statements on behalf of their clients. If Jerry Farrell Sr. or Janice Small had made a pithy, encouraging, a statement, been in the Record Journal, something upbeat and okay. But that was out. I went to the Hartford Courant. Yes, I found something. I'm going to share it with you in a minute. Okay. And then I went to the Washington Post. Just coincidence. There's another lawyer talking about his client's case in litigation. I'll pull that out in a minute too. I got to plow through the papers. So that could have been 3 for 3, but it was just this morning. Lawyers across the country, if they let me start again another way of putting it. Who wants a lawyer that can't get in front of a microphone and put a good description of the case in front of the public? Who wants a lawyer who can't do that? I'm not talking about betraying confidences. Right. I'm not talking about revealing, personal information. No, this is business litigation. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do, I'm not talking about confessions. And I'm not talking about putting the client in front of the microphone so the client can stumble and maybe do something that's harmful. No, I'm talking about good lawyers. Good lawyers know how to get in front of the microphone and present, their client's case. I'm going to plow through the papers and take a sip of water. I want to go to Vinny if he defaults. I want to go to you to see your thoughts on my thoughts so far. Then I'll pull out those articles.
So recently we've had an example of an attorney who loved the camera.
Oh, Rudy Giuliani?
No.
Oh.
No, not him.
Okay.
I think his last name was Avenatti.
Yes.
Does that
Oh,
sound
Michael.
familiar? Yes.
My guy.
Attorney Michael Avenatti.
Yeah.
Yes. Champion of those who've been wronged, and very vocal and happy to be in front of every camera who will see
Right.
him until he got indicted. And where is he now? And to some extent, I think that happened with CMEC.
Explain. I'm not sure.
I think early in this process,
Yep.
CMEC was happy to talk to the press, and then they were indicted.
for totally unrelated.
Well-
They
I'm not sure that they are totally unrelated.
Well, the principle I'm getting at is the position, the inflexible position. I don't talk about pending litigation. I'm saying that's bogus, and it covers these other factors that I'm talking about, either the news cycle or the crappy case or the skills issue. But these are the examples I was talking about. So from the Hartford Courant, here's a lawyer talking about his case. And this has to do with the opioid lawsuits. Well, who is talking? It's the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut. He counts. He's
Right,
a
I'm
lawyer.
listening.
He
Yep.
represents a public agency. So Tong, is confident in what he's saying. He's confident in the merits of his case, and he says this case the state of Connecticut is bringing against the opioid manufacturers. This case fundamentally is not really about claims and legal arguments and fraudulent conveyances and multi-state action. Tong said the point of all these efforts are people and families and yada yada yada
Right.
yada. He knows how to do that.
Right.
We don't do that.
Right. I'm listening. Go ahead.
You could. There's no inflexible rule that you don't talk about litigation, and the impression that is left that it is just an ironclad rule all lawyers follow. Poopycock,
Yeah.
which, as you know, is worse than poppycock.
I guess.
Because poopycock, that's poopy. So here's another one. It was just today. I didn't know I was going to find this. I didn't know I'd wake up this morning and get lucky and find two examples of lawyers talking about pending litigation. This comes from the Washington Post, and it has to do with the United States charging a Chinese businessman with stealing GE's trade secrets. This indictment, quote, the lawyer talking about pending litigation. This indictment alleges a textbook example of the Chinese government's strategy to rob American companies of their intellectual property and replicate yada, 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 so on and so forth. Look in the paper every day for examples of lawyers talking about pending litigation. The good lawyers know how to do it, and they don't miss an opportunity. They're not betraying confidences. They're not revealing, strategy or secret stuff. So in the case of the Wallingford arbitration and CMEC, there are a lot of opportunities to answer questions forthrightly and honestly by the lawyers for Wallingford. At the same time, not revealing secrets or strategy. The opportunities were there. And the question is, was the will there and the skills there to pull that off? That's all. Vinny, I'm going to go to you to see if you have thoughts on my thoughts, because I went into a general topic. I wasn't talking about how much money you're getting. I'm not asking you to criticize the lawyers or anything else, but I just want to give you a chance.
No, you're dancing around this very artfully and as large an arc as you can.
That's what we try to do here at the Citizen Mike Show. We like large arcs.
At least tonight, that's what we try to do.
Excellent. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think there's something to be said for being consistent. In terms of the fact that it makes your life easier going forward. You're not dodging and backtracking from taking inconsistent positions. And at the same time, there's a Freedom of Information Act exclusion that allows private meetings of public entities when they're talking about their litigation strategy. And there's a good reason for it. I'll use an analogy that lawyers certainly understand, and anybody who's been involved in litigation will understand it. But in the rules of evidence, there's a near universal rule that when you get in front of a judge or a trier of fact, a jury, you're not going to talk about the things that you discussed in settlement. Those are barred from discussion at the time of trial. And it's because we want to encourage people to have settlement discussions. Well, similarly, we want to encourage people to have good negotiations, and we also want to encourage people to have strategies. And in the interest of protecting those, if you're consistent about not making public comments about the pending litigation, you're going to avoid the pitfall of overspeaking and falling into the pit you create.
There you are. What do you think?
I think your point is a good one, and
No, but you got to say Vinny's point is a good one too.
no. I think the notion that
No?
You got it.
He said no.
no, I didn't. I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry. I was
I
was actually on the fly
Yeah, I saw you scribbling madly.
because
Yeah, I saw you
I think
scribbling madly.
that even with my limited knowledge
Yeah.
of the case, I could get before a microphone and say something like, there are important principles involved in this case. We feel the taxpayer was overcharged. We don't ever want the taxpayer overcharged. That's why we're pursuing this case. It's a complicated case, and not everything has gone as well as we had planned. But we are going to stick it out because we feel there are important principles involved.
Yeah.
We can understand that the taxpayer would be concerned about the legal bill being run up in this case. We can only say that we're only spending as much money as we feel this case is worth. We will assess it, week to week, month to month. If there's a way to settle this and decrease the legal fee, so I think you get my point.
I do.
Why even I could get before a microphone and say things like that? I don't know why the town has been unable to do that.
Vinny.
I just want to, and forgive me, but there's an important distinction to be made. These are the ratepayers.
Okay, right, right.
And,
You're exactly right.
There are people in Northford who
Good point.
have
So-
electricity from us, and
Right, so instead of taxpayer, I would say ratepayer.
Yeah.
Okay,
And-
good.
I just think it's an important
Yes,
distinction.
yes. That's
Let's,
it. That's it.
thank
Okay,
you.
that's all right.
Let's talk about the pool, community pool. No, can we switch?
Yes, we can, but we don't have that much time.
We don't have, we
We-
got about 3.5 minutes. Very quickly, 3 sentences on background, then we'll go to Vincent Cervoni and ask what he thinks. So we had an idea for the community pool. It was out in the public domain for a long time, and that was a pool that had 13,000 square feet. And that's reduced from the current 42,000 square feet. And that, Dave Stein of Silver Petrocelli did the schematic and went over to John Gawlock, Park and Rec, and that was in the public domain for about a year. The town council enthusiastically got behind the 13,000 square foot pool. And bid specs are drafted on Silver Petrocelli's, design on the 13,000 square foot pool. In the course of the bid process, my judgmental critique is John Gawlock and Park and Rec, on the basis of something we can't verify, got talked out of 13,000 square feet and is down to 10,000 square feet. And not only the process, but the substance of the decision appalled me. And the examples that the pool committee gave as to why we can live with a 10,000 square foot pool don't hold water, choice of words intended. Vinny is grinning. So they pointed to New Britain pool. Well, New Britain had a smaller pool, but New Britain has 2 pools, and so on and so forth. Vinny, you're closer to this, I think, than I am, because you're privy to conversations with the mayor and the insiders, and I don't talk to these guys. I don't swim in those waters. If you were mayor, would you handle this differently? Would the procedures change, the decision change? Or is it money that matters, and whatever reduces the money is okay with you?
That's a big question. I mean, this, and it's, we're talking tens of thousands of square feet. It's a good thing we're not talking about tens of thousands of gallons of water, because that's in the mix as well.
Well played, yes.
I can only speak to this specifically with what I've learned through the process and what came before us when we approved the design consultant, who's also ultimately going to be the project manager if the pool is built. And that is that the first proposal we got might have been a fantasy, where we were told that this was a $4 million to $5.5, $6 million project, or was it $4.5 to $6 million project, that this is now turning into that same proposal is really an $8 or $9 million project,
Allegedly.
and this is by the contractor who was ultimately chosen because it has the most experience building pools throughout New England.
Allegedly.
Well, do you have?
We don't
reason-
know what he said. We don't know what he said. We don't know the context. We don't know the question. We don't know the hedge. He's in a bit of a conflict of interest because the more we can afford to spend on his fee, the less we can spend on a pool. So he brings the size of the pool down. There's more wiggle room. It was just, handled behind closed doors. And as you know from my prior preaching, 10 minutes ago, when you go behind closed doors and there's no transparency, who knows what can happen and why it happens. So my question was, is this how you would want it handled if you were mayor, or would you want a written document giving an opinion as to why our bid specs are wrong? Would you call in Silver Petroselli and say, you guys screwed up, I want to see your background material and why you did? That's what I'm getting at. It seems to me things were sloppy. I just want to know where your heart is on this.
Well, I do want to know how. I would want to know how we got a project that proves to be unwieldy. I thought it was unwieldy when it was first presented,
Yeah.
and I think I said that on your show. I'd want to know why going forward, why we're looking at 3,000 square feet less of pool,
Yeah.
and why that's a good idea. Frankly, from a cost perspective, sitting where I sit, it makes it more palatable. This is a big endeavor for a small sector of the town's population. We're less than 2,000 passes last year.
We're running out of time, but I wanted to grab the last word. And usually I let the guests do it, but I wanted to get this out, and I'm sorry to sort of leave you out here hanging.
ahead.
10 years from now, when the mom and dad and two toddlers go to that pool, I don't want them saying, thank God for Mayor Dickinson. He saved $1 million. The pool's a little crowded, but thank God for Mayor Dickinson. I'll always remember him for saving $1 million on the size of the pool, and the extra 3,000 square feet. Ooh, get away, crowd. And thank God for the town council for not putting enough money in the budget, so the pool closed in mid-August. And thank God for the town council for not putting money in the pool budget for being open 2 nights a week. I really appreciate all that saved money. This is 10 years from now. Okay. This is 10 years from now. And I don't want to be in that position where we skimped on a pool. It's a very ordinary, mediocre pool. But 10 years from now, the taxpayers, oh, how grateful they are for saving some bucks. Then you do have 15 or 20 seconds. You have a quizzical look on your face like I'm crazy. Go for it. But you got 10 seconds or 15.
Do you remember when we all used to trick or treat? And people trick or treat a lot less? I'm wondering if 10 years from now, people are going to be using a community pool.
Let's make that the final word. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having
We do appreciate it. It was fun. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We do appreciate that. Good night, everybody. Be safe.